Hi guys, as I'm still recovering from a knee injury, today's video is all about N+1.
Will you take part in my life, my love? That is my dream. I think what I dream is what you make it. Always try to...
What is N+1? Simply put, the N equals the current number of bikes you currently have. Plus 1 is the number you need to have a happily fulfilled life. For every N+1, new memories and experiences are created. In this video, I'm going to share the reason for the N+1 and the memories and experiences each +1 created. So to begin, we must go back to when I first needed N+1. Riding an old rally 40 miles round trip to work, I even sprayed bits of it pink to make it cooler. I have no idea where this bike came from, but it just wasn't cutting it. So I saved up and bought my first ever bike, the Bianchi Center Strada, with Campagnolo Veloci group set, and just look at them awesome white tyres. This was my first ever bike that I saved up for and purchased, and my first ever road bike. I absolutely loved this bike. The new sense of speed was exhilarating. However, it was short-lived as the carbon frame developed a crack and had to be returned. Luckily, Bianchi were good and they offered me a replacement frame. This frame was actually the next frame up in Bianchi's lineup, the Bianchi Infinito. And probably the coolest part of receiving this frame, it had a limited edition paint job. Just one of 100 made for the UK. This bike really changed things. I upgraded all the parts and got some bling carbon rims. Just look at that beauty. I think even to this day, this is still the most beautiful bike I have ever owned. But as much as I love to appreciate the good looks of bikes, they still need to be ridden. And oh, did this bike get ridden. This bike literally took me all over the UK, and it is what got me into long distance cycling. From a ride to Scotland and back in 7 days, to attempting to cycle the length of Britain twice in 7 days, and many, many others. But then the time came for N+1. It was time for another bike. This time I was looking for pure fun. Of course, it was time for a mountain bike. After many hours of testing out bikes in the shop, I decided on the Trek Remedy 8. It had an XT group set, Fox suspension. It was just what I needed for the fun that I wanted to have. Not only was this bike great for some cross-country adventures, it was super fun to go and spend the day in the woods hitting them jumps. But as always, there is always room for one more. The bad weather was here, the mountain bike was too slow for the commute, and the road bike just too nice. It was time for a new bike. This time, a track bike. Fixed gear, the hipster of all hipsters bikes, the Dolan Precursor. Perfect commuting bike, fast, light, and not much to go wrong. This bike introduced me into the world of fixed gear cycling, and I loved it. Although I brought this bike for commuting, I used to love going on little day adventures on it, sometimes doing over 100 miles fixed. But of course, there was still something missing, and within a couple days, the doorbell goes and a new ride was here. The bike? A Sunday Aaron Ross BMX. That's right, a 6'6" giant used to ride a BMX. I initially brought this bike because I wanted to try and learn some tricks. Now, that didn't really happen. I just about managed to 180, but I couldn't fakie, go backwards. So this bike ended up being used just for riding around for fun. Until one day I was asked to ride in a charity ride. Now, the ride was only about 60 miles, and to be honest, that wasn't going to be a challenge. So, I think you know where this is going. That's right, I decided to do this ride on the BMX. But not only one way, I decided I would be riding back as well. And by the end of that day, I had racked up 135 miles on a BMX. Now, a bit of time went on and the +1 slowed down until I had the idea. The idea? To cycle around the coast of France, Spain and Portugal. But what bike? Well, there was a new style of bike becoming a bit popular. The fat bike. This bike was not only going to be different, but the first bike I would build up myself. With a little help from friends, of course. Now, this was the bike, the N+1 Fatty. This bike was an absolute monster. Forget riding downstairs, you rode up with them. Now, before setting off on this epic adventure, a few bikes had to go. The track bike, the mountain bike, and the BMX. That bike took me on an adventure of a lifetime. Cycling the coast, France, Spain and Portugal, experiencing amazing views and meeting people along the way. But all good things come to an end and I returned home with a lack of bikes. So you guessed it, it's N+1 time. I brought my dream track bike, the Cinelli Mash Histogram, and built it up myself. Just look at that beauty. Now, by this point, I was dabbling in the idea of trying out some road racing, but for sentimental reasons, I just couldn't race the Bianchi. I worked lots, saved hard, really hard, and the next bike in the lineup, some of you may recognize, the Canyon Aero Road. Fast, light aero, and electric gears. This bike really upped my game. Made me train harder and I got a lot faster. So with this bike, I entered some road races and found out pretty quickly I didn't enjoy it at all. Being pretty bummed out about that, I decided that I was going to buy another bike and cycle the entire coast of Britain. Now, I needed something strong, versatile and comfortable. And well, this is my friend John, and he had not long brought this bike. So, well, I copied him. The bike, the Genesis Croix de Fer. A solid all-rounder made of steel, had disc brakes and a million places to mount things. This bike is a true workhorse. I built it with 10-speed 105, and this bike took me around the entire British coast, which was truly incredible. Wild camping every night, the beautiful coastal views and the amazing cycling. Now by this point I had sold my fat bike and I'd broken my dream track bike. It was time for another track bike, and after a lot of umming and ahhing, I picked up a second-hand Ridley Arena track frame and pretty much built it up exactly like my old Cinelli. I'm only going to say one thing about this bike. It's aggressive as. Now we are coming on to more recent times. The Sonda Camino Titanium. At this point, I have ridden on carbon frames, aluminium frames and steel frames, but there was one material left. Titanium. I built this bike up with one thing in mind. Long distance. This bike has already helped me achieve my longest ride in 24 hours at 368 miles and is also amazingly versatile. A quick change of tyres and this bike is a fully fledged gravel machine. That brings me to the end of my N+1 story. Actually, wait a minute. N+1, innit?